Hi everyone. We're gonna jump in here for the first huddle of the Spring 2020 National Project Youth Changemakers. I'm excited. We've been reviewing your submissions all morning, giving you feedback in the note stock that we'll be using for the call today. So everybody will be operating out of that note stock. It has an agenda on here. Um, so welcome. Thank you so much. Hopefully you've had a fun 2 weeks kicking off this project, immersing in your local YMCA and greater communities, and are able to share out now these insights. So the way that the call today is going to go, we have an order set up. Wash US to go first because of a need for like a conflict of the class at the end of the this call here. So we'll be going WashU, Fordham, MSU, NYU, and UT Austin. Each of the teams are going to have 4 minutes to share out the decks that they submitted, share it out with the rest of the community, and then we'll open it up for feedback from Eileen first, and she hasn't seen them yet. Kelly and I have been reviewing them all morning, and then after Eileen, we'd like to open it up to teams, and then we can go to Kelly and I for additional feedback if you have questions. But we'd love for you guys to talk to each other about and give feedback on each other's projects and giving them insights into like how your experience went, so that you can help each other on, of course, this project as well.
Yeah. This time in particular, a lot of your guys' questions, thank you so much for using the template and for asking questions and posing questions at the end of each of your decks. That really helps us give you the feedback that you're looking for. But a lot of your questions were actually for each other. Questions about how to interact with the youth of today, as well as some other things. So please do help each other answer those questions. We can give advice and coach, but we're not on the ground doing the awesome work that you guys are doing, and some of those questions are only answerable with each other, with the other teams here. So
Yeah. So the way that this will work, so WashU, you're going to share your screen. If you like wiggle your little mouse over the Blue Jeans video, there's a share screen icon at the beginning or at the top of that screen there. I ask everybody to mute themselves when they're not talking, so that like there's no interference while the team is presenting. We're going to be keeping time on our end, and we'll buzz in when there's like a halfway or like a minute left. We'll say, so we only have to bug you once. But 4 minutes goes by fast. You'll learn. Hopefully we'll be able to go through this with minimal time going over so we can focus on giving feedback. So WashU, if you could queue up your presentation, that would be great.
I'm going to start my timer.
Yeah, Kelly is timekeeper. Amazing.
Okay, is it going all right for y'all?
Yeah, we can see here.
Oh, okay, great. Great. Okay, yes, this is our Immerse presentation. So I guess quick overview of our research links. We read kind of a lot about what it means to be a change maker and how change makers can work in different ways in their communities. I guess we go talk more about that later in the presentation.
Yeah, and then as far as people that we've contacted, we actually went to the South City Y, which is kind of nearby WashU, and we talked to a bunch of people there. So Jessica is actually on WashU's campus, so we did a phone call with her. And then Rashida was a dance instructor and receptionist at the South City Y, and we got a lot of good information from her about the existing YMCA programs. And then Megan Schulman is actually a senior at WashU, and so we kind of talked to her about her like volunteering experience with kids at the YMCA. And then we also contacted Alexandria and Drew, who work respectively at the Gateway YMCA and the South City Y. And then some questions that we kind of addressed in our interviews were what are some existing programs, and then also how do teens now use the YMCA?
Let's see. Okay. So I guess for secondary research, there's a lot about, what is a change maker, when you look online at least, like how is it often defined, and it seems to often be in like a more political sense. I'm interested in seeing if that's what, teens these days like really think about it. Like, is a change maker more political to them, or can it be in other senses too? We didn't find that much quantitative information about it. It seemed like a very qualitative area of things. And yeah, there were a bunch of articles. One that I thought was interesting, that's kind of related, was like there was like a youth empowerment program for agriculture in Nigeria that there was like a huge decline in. And basically the reason for that was because it was a very long-term oriented program, and they saw that young people were way more interested in short-term, like more immediate benefits compared to, being invested for a long run. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays in when we create whatever our solution is, and seeing how it can kind of fit in some like immediate benefits to what they're doing so that they know they're having an impact.
One more
Yeah.
minute.
Oh,
Oh,
snap.
okay. Going back to our interviews, a really good quote that we got from Rashida is, "An idle mind is the devil's workshop." And so basically she talked about like these teens come into the YMCA, but there's no programming for them. So they sit around and they kind of create a ruckus in the YMCA. So they've had to create a lot of more rules about who can enter, who can come in. And yeah, there's basically no programming for them.
Yeah, these are some people we hope to contact in the future. I'm especially excited to talk to Drew Hill, who's a new youth and teen director at South City, and just seeing what he's doing on the job there. And then, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, so some feedback that we kind of wanted to get from you guys was, like, besides online research, we went to the YMCA, but what are other methods that other teams have used? And then should we be researching like St. Louis specific, or are we keeping it more general? And can we reach out to other youth programs besides the YMCA? And is that our jumping off point or more of a constraint? And then also on user interviews, our team found it kind of awkward, I guess, to talk to people at the YMCA. So how have other teams interacted with teenagers, and like how have their user interviews gone, like when they've talked to them?
Yeah, that's it.
Nice. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Aileen, do you have any first impressions? Oh, you're muted.
Oh,
There we go. Okay. My first impulse is to say great job. I think a few of the things that stood out for me as interesting insights were that the idea of political change versus other kinds of change in the community, and what differentiates something that's political change. Like I'm trying to think of kinds of change in a community that aren't considered political, and what would those be? And so I'm just curious about that. I thought that was interesting. Also, the idea about how kids are more interested in seeing short-term results, which makes a lot of sense. And so the idea that you can build in some sort of short-term measures of success, even if you have a project that's got long-term goals, also seemed really important to me. The question about should you focus on St. Louis or should it be kind of general? I think for most of these, it's important to stay local, and to, from my point of view anyway, different communities. You're talking about people making change within their communities, and those communities will have distinct characteristics. So I think the idea of keeping it local, but keeping in mind that it needs to be scalable, would be important. And then the last thing about how do you talk to teenagers? I did work with teenagers quite a lot at the high school here, and what I found out was that they like to be treated like adults, but except with more food. So they responded well to being given snacks, and they were hungry and they were bored and they wanted food. But once they were engaged in that respect, then when I talked to them as though they were adults with adult even though they're not technically, but they tend to shut down right away when you don't treat them like adults. So
Right.
that's pretty much the feedback I have so far.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Appreciate those insights.
That's
I'll also add on that note about your question about staying local and staying St. Louis specific. From our conversations with the YMCA representatives, they've told us that they are not so interested in learning about the kinds of topics that youth are interested in. They already have like a really good understanding about what youth want to get involved in. But that's not to say that you should ignore those things. I think staying local and really understanding, well, maybe there's a lot of youth activism in St. Louis around gun violence and gun control. That knowing that piece could be a great avenue to finding other youth groups in St. Louis that are sort of rallying around these topics. So that I'm not saying ignore what is specific about what youth are interested in St. Louis, but don't focus on necessarily the topics so much. Think about the topics as ways to learn more about how youth are getting engaged or how they're interested in getting engaged in St. Louis.
Does anyone else on the call have any insights to answer like questions about methods that you've been using to do your research or how you've been setting up your interviews for the next minute? No, maybe. I'm sure you all would do, so I hope so. But maybe that question will be answered as we go over the course of the rest of these presentations. Yeah, so staying specific to St. Louis, I think will allow you to just like it's where you're able to access and your community and have those one-on-one conversations with stakeholders and the youth in your community. I am a big proponent of discovering emulators in secondary research right now. Emulators is a term that I used in school when discovering like creating programming like for a brand, for example. And so it's going and finding like, okay, young people are interested or we want this experience to be similar to do these things. So what other organizations are out there? What other spaces or experiences are out there that we're able to look at and understand the key parts of those things that are resonating with young people or could resonate with young people if brought to the YMCA?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that you made me think of, it's like a technique that we usually use in prototyping or in ideation. But drawing on your insight that these teens don't have programming at this specific South City Y, they're creating a so-called ruckus because they don't have programming. What if an emulator for that experience that you're trying to create is like a coffee shop where they feel comfortable to come into the Y, they feel like they can do what they want. There's a lot of different activities that people are doing, whether individually or together. But there are certain sorry, I'm echoing a little bit, but there are certain ways of acting in a coffee shop that people feel like they shouldn't be playing music out loud or they shouldn't be too loud of a conversation. That's just off the top of my head, maybe a very basic example of an emulator. How can we emulate the coffee shop environment and the rules of conduct in a coffee shop in this YMCA for teens?
Yeah, that's very good feedback. Thank you very much.
Of course. Okay, Fordham, you're up next. Washu, if you could stop sharing your screen, please. Cool. Fordham, if you could start sharing your screen, please. Caitlin, you okay? I see your microphone blinking, but nothing has changed.
Oh, there we go.
Oh.
Yay.
Okay. Okay, you have 4 minutes. Caitlin, we can't hear you.
Is she unmuted?
Yeah.
Yeah. Caitlin, are you there?
Hmm. Hey, Caitlin, we're gonna have MSU go. Maybe if you could log off and log back on, we'll have you go after MSU and see if that works out the technical difficulties, just for sake of time.
Oh, there's a chat.
Oh.
What's she saying?
Chat, Caitlin. Oh, you're good.
If you haven't downloaded the desktop app, that might fix the problem. I don't know if you're on the browser Blue Jeans right now or not. Sometimes that's the issue. But just make sure all of your permissions are set. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Okay. Okay.
Nice.
Thanks.
MSU, can you pull up your presentation?
Paula and Brandon. And then Caitlin, if you could stop sharing your screen, that'd be appreciated. Okay. Okay, technical difficulty is bound to happen. Thanks for your flexibility, Caitlin.
Okay.
Sorry, we're trying to navigate.
We shared
this.
the wrong screen.
Yep. All right.
There we go. Okay.
Cool.
Okay. All right, so this is our Immerse. So kind of our weekly activity overview. So we found we just kind of got on our computers and we're searching change makers, like mainly related to kind of Michigan. And so we found a lot of really cool things. Like this upcoming weekend, they're having a Michigan Youth and Government conference. So we're gonna plan on going to that. We also kind of found like programs that maybe aren't related to YMCA but are still in the Lansing area, and we found that they kind of split up the Lansing area into these neighborhoods, and each neighborhood they offer kind of different programs based on what businesses are in that area. So we found that kind of interesting. So we've contacted people, but due to the timing and their schedules, we haven't been able to really get any interviews in, but they're set up for this upcoming week. I have an interview with this Janet Colson. She's a professor at MSU, but she's also an employee at the Oak Park YMCA, and she's a yoga instructor. But she also, okay. And then we also have Jeff Schiebel and Casey Thompson. We're gonna have a lunch with them on Friday, and they're kind of important people, the president and the CEO of the YMCA in this area. And again, we're having an event. We're going to this event, the YMCA Michigan Youth and Government Conference, this weekend, and then we're going to do a survey so that way we can get some of the college kids and their input on YMCA. And these are just general questions that we're going to address, but this next slide is kind of an overview of kind of different questions we want to ask based on kind of the group that we're going to be interviewing. So we kind of got really into that. Yeah, so what we're trying to learn through our interviews is like we really want to get an understanding about this Lansing area YMCAs. We're kind of fortunate enough to have, I want to say 5 or 6 in this area, just spread out around the Lansing area. And so we want to see, if they have been trying to focus on like the youth and becoming change makers and maybe what we have done or what they have done. But we noticed that they have a lack in social media, and especially the lack of it engaging towards the youth and like kind of advertising the programs that they have. So our secondary research, so again, we focused on how the local YMCA may be engaging its youth through social media.
Yeah, and so we also, we really wanted to kind of look at like what structures are there as far as YMCA outreaching to the youth. A lot of the questions that we have for the executives at the local branches is just kind of like how they're engaging with the youth if they have multiple projects, because as we know, there's a lot of health related things, but I'm curious outside of that, like what our local Y has to offer. And
Oh yeah, so what other programs are found? So I kind of already went over about the neighborhoods. And then what is offered at the YMCA in our area that we kind of found maybe that allows the youth to grow. There's a YMCA Leader Club that offers ages 10 to 18 a mentor to help guide them through like their studies and their future plans, and they're kind of linked up with maybe an older mentor, so that way they can kind of guide them through the transitions at their age. And then also that YMCA Youth in Government. So yeah, they're going to have more than 600 students, and they throughout the day serve as legislators, lobbyists, lawyers. And so one of the quotes is that I got the slap stat was, so these youth and government students have created legislation adopted statewide, including an anti-bullying law signed by a previous governor and like vertical IDs for those under 21. So they're already kind of becoming change makers. So we're really excited to kind of get more insight into that.
Cool. 30 seconds, guys.
Yeah, go ahead and wrap it up.
Okay. Yeah, so these are kind of our next steps, which is everything I kind of covered about like our interviews and our events. Yeah, so this is our type of feedback. We haven't really found how a change maker is fostered or any kind of like information on that, so we're really curious about like how do we define this change maker as a whole, and then is there anyone outside of YMCA that we should be trying to connect with, and then who should our primary user be, because we don't know if it should be like focused on the youth or it should be focused on YMCA engaging the youth.
Cool. Aileen?
Okay, great job. I loved your first two questions. In what ways have you seen the YMCA create change in your community? And have you ever been directly affected by something the Y has done? I thought those were really key questions, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what insights you get from your interviews with people. I'm sorry that you haven't been able to connect with those people yet, but I think it's going to be great when you do. I also thought that noticing a lack of social media was a really good insight already, because I tend to agree that would be extremely useful for engaging kids. I was wondering if you could help me out with when you were saying how they have that the programs in each neighborhood are related to the businesses in those neighborhoods. So were you saying that the Y has programs in each neighborhood based on what businesses are there?
No, sorry. So we were looking kind of outside of YMCA, maybe what's offered in the Lansing area, and kind of like, so they spread out. So a neighborhood is like a northeast part of Lansing, and so we have like a Marshall Music, so they have music lessons there, dance lessons here, and then southeast of Lansing.
Are those things that people go to those specific businesses and pay for? They're not done through some sort of a community organization?
We didn't see if they offered any, like if it was something that was free or if it had like a cost of tuition. We were just mainly curious about in general what is like available for people to kind of get into.
Okay. Also, I was asking about, how is change makers are fostered and stuff. I don't know if you would remember. I posted a couple articles, links in the general channel on Slack a while back, and I think those might be useful for you.
Okay, yeah, we'll check those out.
Yeah, you can also check out, some of WashU's secondary research was around that question about what is a change maker, so you might want to check out some of their links in their presentation as well. I think it's great that you guys are considering what's the local landscape outside of the YMCA for how people are getting engaged. WashU, I know you had a lot of questions about that, like, are we allowed to go outside of the YMCA and talk to people outside of that? Yes, for sure. NYU, you also had a question about doing competitor analysis. I think competitor analysis, getting to know sort of the landscape of youth activism, community engagement outside of the YMCA is central for all of you to explore that possibility. Because again, the YMCA is looking for ideas for how to better engage youth. And there's going to be people and organizations in these communities that are going to do different aspects of that better than the YMCA is doing. And understanding what they're doing is going to be central to answering this challenge for the YMCA.
Yeah. And sharing those resources with each other in the Slack, like if you find something that is going well for you, like in MSU in Lansing, it probably isn't going to be happening at the other studios, like where these teams, the other teams on the project are. But those sites or maybe their website or their programming could be something unique and new that they could bring to their particular project. So it's always worth sharing out information with each other over the course of the project.
A couple of you had a very similar question about who else can we reach out to. Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, those organizations are everywhere and they're trying to do similar things. I'm sure a lot of you guys might have family members or friends of family members that are younger that are or might have been previously involved in Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. Interviewing them is great. Don't forget about the people that you're already close to. That could be a really quick 15-minute phone call away. As people to reach out to.
Yeah. I also would encourage you, I know we focus on youth in this, but a lot of adults were youth once, and
most of them, in fact.
You're right, Kelly. Most of them were. So I like also talking to your parents or a cool mentor that you have in your life about things that inspired them to make change and when they were young, and how that just understanding of what has happened in the past can really inform how you translate that to the present. To the current demographic that we're looking at now. But don't forget that there are a lot of other people that have become change makers in their youth as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Be sure to ask each other questions, but we have to move on. Caitlin, is your microphone working? We would like you to go next if possible.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yay.
Yes.
Awesome. Great. I don't know every time. All right. Oh wait, I didn't share it. Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead and share it.
There we go.
As Caitlin's sharing that, MSU, focus in on that. As you keep immersing, focus in on that like social media marketing aspect. That's something the YMCA National has mentioned before, is that they're interested in that like marketing side of things as well. How do they just get people in the room? So don't lose sight of that insight, like Aileen said. All right, Caitlin, I'll stop delaying.
Am I sharing successfully? We're good? Okay. So our weekly meetings, we meet like Thursdays and Fridays. Okay. So some of the things that we're trying to figure out, like mainly like why do mentorship programs fail? How is Gen Z different from previous generations? Basically how youth and like adult leaders of youth activist groups feel about youth activism. How you feel about the YMCA, and also this one specific question that like I think one of the previous schools kind of touched on was, as spaces for teens to hang out strewn throughout the country, is there an opportunity for the YMCA to create space for teens to hang out? And then also, is there like a general awareness about YMCA teen programs, and are they being taken advantage of? So one of our members did some like academic research, which was great. So this is a list of articles that she read, and these were some insights that she drew from those articles. She said that nonprofits must seek a competitive edge through innovation and legitimization. She thinks that she found that like to the point language is often like important today. And just general like characteristics of Gen Z and why mentorship programs fail. So we've interviewed 3 people so far. We interviewed one person who is a member of the Westside YMCA. We interviewed 2 people from this outside organization called the Communities for Alcohol and Drug-Free Youth. So we talked to a member and then the youth services coordinator, and then we need to follow up with a couple of contacts that we have. So We were supposed to have an interview with this YMCA teen director, and she like kind of ghosted us. So we're gonna try to reach out to her again. And then there's a couple of other outside organizations that we want to get in touch with. So
You're
interview
halfway through.
takeaways. Okay. Interview takeaways. This is a lot. This is very dense. So the person who was a member of the Westside YMCA said that like they felt that the programming was largely focused on senior citizen exercise, and he was hoping that like there were exercise classes that would welcome young people. In terms of like youth activism amongst teens, like they were saying that teens kind of fear judgment, and it might be like uncool to go against the grain and be passionate about something like activism. And there might be a lack of general information as to how to get involved. And it's important to start youth activism young, and also there's like the sort of issue of like getting teens away from their phones, because phones are much more interesting than like doing other things at times. And then, feedback. So basically, we're having a really hard time reaching out to local YMCAs, and we were wondering if there's any tips to reaching out. We were also wondering, like, how can we, like, involve our new members with the process of research and interviewing, and just how can we get more youth involved in the interviewing process? Like, just how do we go about like talking to teens? Like not so much like how to talk to them, but like I guess I don't want to say access to, but you know what I mean, right? Like, but yeah, that's what we've been up to.
Great, thank you, Caitlin.
Eileen?
Yeah, again, great job. I really liked hearing about the importance of messaging and language and being direct and specific versus being vague. I think that was a good insight, especially that idea of when you're trying to be all inclusive, you probably are trying to cast too wide a net sometimes. So I thought that the idea of addressing young people specifically made a lot of sense. Sorry you got ghosted. The only thing I could say about that is it's a great idea when you have meetings set up to send people an email the day before and just say or even that morning, say just reaching out to confirm our meeting today at 3:00. See you then. Just a little reminder so people don't get busy. They shouldn't forget, but they do. In terms of where to find teenagers, and also I was thinking about this when we were talking before about other kinds of organizations that create change makers. Churches and synagogues, I think, that have youth organizations, a lot of times those are focused on social services, on creating social change. And if anybody belongs to a church or a synagogue around them, or knows somebody who does, or even if you, you're all the way at school, so it's possible that you don't around there, or if there's a way to talk to kids through that kind of a setting, it might be easier to find. I understand that thing of where are we going to get access to all these teenagers, because you're not going into schools at this point, and if they're not at the Y already, if the idea is to attract them to the Y, they're not there either. So I think that's a good question, and then I guess the other thing is to maybe go to places where teenagers might hang out. I'll admit that I'm not sure where that is these days. She said, feeling very old, but if there's the possibility to do that and ask if you can interview people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would also say, and this goes for everyone, when you are able to interview someone who's a leader of a youth group or even the YMCA themselves, always end the interview asking who else you can talk to. And in this case, maybe it is about specifically who are youth that you can connect us to, because it'll be a lot easier and make the interview a lot more comfortable if you can get a referral from someone that knows that student rather than walking into a library saying, "You're a youth, can I talk to you?" It'll make for a lot more comfortable of an interview for everyone. I'll also say, in terms of reaching out to Ys, we have a great group of YMCA contacts that we're going to post in the Slack today. I don't think we've done that yet. And these are from local YMCAs, not necessarily in your local areas, but across the country, that have been identified by YMCA of the USA as thought leaders for this changemaker topic. So those are going to be great contacts for you guys to reach out to, especially for those that haven't been able to get in contact with the Y yet. And on the last call, they did discuss they've got like a cohort of students, of youth, that they reference and talk to about this topic as well, and they want to get them involved. So that'll be a great chance to talk to young YMCAers about this too.
Yeah. And that goes to, if you know anyone, like the magic of this phone call right now, this video call, is that you can set up a video call, Google Hangout, with people all across the country. So if you have siblings, cousins, somebody that you know, call them up, try to do a virtual interview as well, to gain those insights into a driver, or what really motivates them, or how they've been involved. And you can expand your reach outside of just your local area with the digital technology of today.
Yeah.
Whoa.
NYU, I'll ask that you guys start pulling up your presentation, but as you're doing that, I mean, you guys are right there. Have you guys also, I don't remember from 2 hours ago, are you guys also having trouble getting contact with the New York Ys?
Yeah, we emailed, we got like one contact from the McBurney YMCA by Union Square. But we didn't get the connection through like email, so we just went in and sort of talked to them.
Yeah.
And turns out,
just going and showing up is a good way at least to get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, feel free to share contacts, you guys, in the New York area. Feel free to, communicate over Slack between Fordham and NYU to say, like, hey, we finally got an interview set up. Like, feel free to join us. I don't know where you guys all live and go to school in relation to each other. I know there's a couple different campuses. But if it is convenient for, a member from one to hop over to another interview, definitely use your different schedules and your different locations to your advantage to sort of divide and conquer in the New York area.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Nice.
Thanks.
Cool.
All right, we'll have NYU go next.
Yeah.
All right. Really stop. Oh, cool.
Okay. So this week we sort of spent our time more on the primary research. So we did a lot of like site visits. So we actually went to 4 YMCAs in the city because we want to see what the differences or if there are any similarities between them. We also went multiple times and in different days to see if there are any differences depending on the day and time. I feel like we do need to do some secondary research, but the research that we've done so far sort of revolves around the Y history, social media again, and also like how do young people discover nonprofit, and also like what are the behaviors revolving around youth and sort of making change in their community. So we actually found that a lot of them they care about a lot of social issues, but they don't have the money to sort of like donate. So what they do is volunteer time and or the goods that they have. Some of the questions that we address are organizational structure, and also the registration process of becoming a new member. And again, does the demographics differ based on the branch location? What have been the unique selling point of the Y? If there are plans to expand or explore programs that are focused on youths, and it's also like what are the current programs offered for youths? So for our secondary research, we went to Google Trends, which is a great resources for everybody. So we found that a lot of people looked up YMCA in the summers and during the winter break, during the holidays. It might be due to a number of reasons. They have a lot of offerings for summer months, like day camps or going away camps, as well as activities for kids during winter break from school. So that is already a great insight for us. And in terms of the site visits, we were trying to get a first-hand experience of signing up as a new member. So we did the site visits in two ways. Some of us went in and introduced ourselves as researchers, whereas some members went in as sort of like we pretended that we want to sign up as a new member. Yeah, but we also found that if we sort of introduce ourselves as a researcher and we introduce our projects, I feel like we would get more time to talk to the staff members there. So I feel like that's the direction that we wanted to go to next. And sort of the takeaways from the site visits are we went to the different YMCAs in different times, but I feel like most of the people that we saw there were in the like older generations. We didn't see a lot of youths unless it's in the gyms where there are like basketball classes and stuff like that going on. We also feel like they underutilize their multi-purpose room because most of the classes starts at 6 or like very early, and I feel like that's more catered towards the adults.
30 seconds.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we're following up with the contacts that we have. Some of them they didn't reply back, so I feel like it's our best bet to just go again and sort of like ask them directly. And we also want to reach out to youths that are members, youths that are non-members, and youths that are former members. And I already found some former members among my friends, so I'm gonna follow up with them for the interviews. And we will also refine these questions as we go along. But essentially, we wanted to know what they enjoy doing in their free time. What are some of the things they care about? What are some of the things they want to learn but not offered in school? Sort of like their habits and their interests. And so for the feedback we'd like or questions for the group, yes, we're currently developing better analysis. Do you guys think this will help? And what are some of the other similar organizations we should look into? And on the outreach, I guess this is the same throughout the groups. I think we're kind of having trouble finding youths unless it's like our friends' siblings. And what's the best way we should reach out to them? Should we reach out to their parents? And some of our YMCA contacts are not responding, and I'm not sure why. Should we follow up with them again? We don't want to be too annoying. And on the user interviews, if there are any other specific questions or areas that we need to address. And that's it.
Cool. Aileen?
Okay, great job. I like that insight about the Google search data where, you know, it just makes complete sense to me that searches for the Y would be higher when school is out in the summer and in over winter break. And some of that could be students searching. And I'm pretty sure a lot of it is parents searching and trying to figure out what can they do with their kids when school is out and the parents have to work and they need some place for their kids to go. So that tells me that parents are going to be a stakeholder here, and that it would be worth including them as somebody to reach out and talk to. They might be easier to talk to than youth at this point. Also, the idea that sports was the thing you found that got young people to the Y, and I know that in Evanston here, that is a big use for young people at our Y, is that they go there for the gym and for sports. And so, you know, you might start to think about if sports is what gets people in there, you know, is there some way to not think of things in such an isolated way that it's either sports, you know, or a change maker program, but
yeah,
are you maybe going to start to integrate things, you know, kind of like not a bait and switch, but a bait and add to it, where people get lured in they come to play basketball, and then, you know, at some point there's a break and there's some sort of a change maker program.
I just
go ahead.
Right. I just want to add up because I asked the director of the McBurnham branch, and she said that actually they arranged Free Friday for the teenagers that can come and have the party hangout. But then eventually they got a lot of complaints from the majority membership who are the senior people. So they need to manage the royal customer first. Therefore, they need to focus on the senior people rather than just teenager.
Well, were the
So,
seniors being annoyed because there was no actual programming for the teenagers? They were just allowed to come and hang out?
right, right. So, because I think because they don't really have the solid program for the teenagers, that's the first thing. And they have the perception that the teenagers just come to YMCA just for using the gym. And they don't have like a cool activities that can attract to the teenagers. But then they said that the strategy for YMCA is that they're gonna get the teenagers customer through their family members. So that's their strategy right now for New York branches.
Okay. So in other words, if their parents are a Y member, that's how they're going to get the teenagers?
Yes, which is exactly what the YMCA is trying to move away from, right? Because they don't want to take
Mm-hmm.
more of a parental role.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Huh. Well, and
But
then
like from what Nine said also makes sense because when I went to the YMCA in Chinatown, there were no youths in the gym area. They were all in, I mean, they were all in the gym where there is a basketball court. They're not in the workout or pool area, and it's very like the areas are very separated.
Mm.
okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight. Yeah, I mean, YMCAs across the country are each going to have their own local priorities, right? And a lot of the people that we have talked to here at DFA National are the YMCA of the USA people that have certain national priorities. But something that they have mentioned is exactly that most of their business model, most of their membership is coming from the workout and the exercise programs. And so while a priority is placing the YMCA as a space for youth to come and be change makers and learn how to do that, it can't be fighting that business model, right? Like we can't be creating something for youth to be change makers that doesn't work with maybe the older citizen membership that they're drawing in as well. There has to be some way of sort of making them work together. And it's going to be different in the New York area than it's going to be in the Austin area. Maybe a lot of the Austin YMCAs already have teen programming, and some of the New York YMCAs need to find a way to have the older members work better with the youth members that they are trying to attract.
Mm-hmm. And I might just add that, I think it's tempting to look at it is an either or. There's the senior programming and then there's the youth programming, and and they maybe don't want to be mixed up with each other, but maybe that's sort of a false way to look at things, and maybe the idea that you're going to create change makers for the youth, but that maybe these elderly people who we don't want to segregate those people either. Maybe segregating those age groups isn't such a great idea, and maybe that's something to think about.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have to move on due to time, okay. I think, just to respect. But if you have any other questions, I'll stay on for a few minutes afterwards, and if you have the time to, we can ask some follow-up questions. But UT Austin, we want to have you round us out here.
Okay, let's see. Can you all see my screen?
Yep. Well,
we can see a blue screen.
It's nice, and it's a nice shade of blue.
Huh.
You were sharing. Oh, you might have clicked on a different window.
There you go.
Yeah.
We can see it now.
Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
you keep switching back and forth, but yeah, we can see it now.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Ivana, and I'll walk you today to what the UT Austin team has been up to, even though all my teammates are in class right now. So basically, our initial problem statement was how to engage
and empowered youth to be change makers in their communities. But after some discussion of the needs of the YMCA here in Austin and South Texas, we reframe our problem to be how can we engage and empower members of youth and government to be change makers in their communities. So before conducting our secondary and primary research, we came up with these questions to address, which are what exactly is a change maker? What are the existing programs or organizations that turn children into change makers? What are the tools and resources that these organizations use? And what is like the day in the life of a YMCA youth and government student? And to answer those questions, we contacted Fred Kaister and Missy Garcia, but we only interviewed Missy. And then we also conducted, like, most of our research was in our secondary research, which are the articles that we just met that are here on the left. So one of the most important source of our secondary research, and I think it will be like very important for everyone to like just look at the Choca Change Maker schools, because I think that's one of the questions that many people were wondering, like, what organizations are working on this field. And this quote really stood out to us. And it basically, I mean, everyone can read the quote, but it basically mentions that kids have the power to do like an impact today. And that's what their programming and like the resources that they have resonate with young people currently. Which is a great introduction to some of our key takeaways of all our research. And we actually got to download a book about change makers, and we got this definition on like change makers are people who challenge the status quo with radically new and different ideas and then bring their visions to life. And one of the biggest insights was that children and adolescents are different, and each of them is unique, and so is their way to making an impact. So not all of them will be able to stand in front of like hundreds of people and talk about politics or like a social issue or a human rights issue, but they all have different strengths that they can utilize to become a change maker.
Hey, one more minute.
And so this is just an example of one of the free facilitation tools that we found out, and we can send everyone a link to like look them up. And well, we also conducted interviews with Missy, and she's a director of community programming. And some of our questions were like, when did you realize that this was a problem? Have you done anything to measure this, to fix this problem? And more to learn more about the community engagement. That's like a picture. And actually, many of our primary research and our interviews tied to our secondary research. She mentioned how there are different ways that youth can get involved through volunteer events or advocacy efforts, but they can all make an impact in their own way. And she also mentioned that the YMCA wants the students to find their own voice and pursue their passion outside of the youth and government program. However, the main component of the program right now is like making and like drafting the bills. And they feel that they need the youth to be involved in their community after the program ends. And for the next steps, we found other people to contact and organizations. And we're also going to the Youth and Government Student Conference this weekend, as another group mentioned that they were also going to go. So yeah, that was our summary for the week.
Great.
Nice, thank you.
Aileen?
Wow, that was awesome. I loved seeing the quotes. I think that I was missing that a little bit from some of the other presentations, was just to see the sort of storytelling that went on from the questions that you asked, the kinds of stories and quotes that were generated, and that led to insights and gave me a really good idea of the sort of triangle you have there between the community, the Y, and the youth, and how those all could come together to make a change maker program. I saw what I think was fortunate for you in your interviews with Missy was the direct intention of someone from the Y to have youth create an impact on their communities. And it sounds like you've already got this youth and government organization at the Y set up that you can work within. Am I understanding your intention correctly that you're going to work within that program?
Yes, they actually want us to work with the program.
Okay, so that is wonderful, and I'm very excited to see where this leads, because I feel like, you've got sort of a springboard here with that program. Great job.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo everything Aileen said. I think it's great that you found this youth and government program focus, and it's great that your local YMCA is sort of pushing you in that direction. However, I'm gonna push back a little bit. I would try to think about it as a case study, and as like a focused way of thinking about how that YMCA is creating change makers also outside of that program, or what you can learn about this specific program that can be expanded beyond that. And the reason why I say that is because you'll probably hear on the next call, when the YMCA of the USA representatives are on it, that they have told me that they are not as interested in looking at specific programs. And the reason why they say that is because they know that programs where people have to show up in person and they have to pay some sort of fee and they have to have some sort of parent backing might not exactly be reaching all of the audiences that they want to reach. They want to be able to engage change makers that have some of those limitations of not necessarily being able to be there in person consistently, or might not have the parental or the financial support to participate in a program like Youth in Government. So I think your youth and government focus is great. I think that you're going to get a lot of really awesome support and interviewing, because that's what your local YMCA is really looking for. But think about how, I think you had a question, or had sort of a path that you were trying to follow, of how do they stay engaged after the program, or how does what they're doing in the program affect what they're doing outside of the program? And I would think about those periphery themes of what is the context for the youth and government program, and what can this program teach you about the larger sort of environment that this YMCA is creating for change makers. Mm-hmm. So I just want to warn you that you might hear some of those thoughts from the national YMCA people, but keep pursuing what your local YMCA is interested in.
Yeah. And you guys are in a cool position because you have a very strong relationship with your YMCA, being the second time you're on a national project with your local YMCA. I know, like, Brett was the previous point of contact, and now it's transferred to Missy. But like those relationships and the insights from last term's project too, with the lifeguards and retention and recruitment, a lot of the teams did a lot of focusing on like what lifeguards of today were, and a lot of that kind of fits into this age range that we're looking at of change makers. So I'm going to be sharing out over the course of this. I was like, well, this is a lot of parallels, the decks and findings from them, from all the teams who are on the previous national project with the YMCA for phase 2, so you can learn a little bit more about the insights they had for those. I do want to mention some other things. A lot of people have talked about doing site visits and interviews. When you're doing a site visit, definitely be taking advantage of, like, visit everything, like take photos, take pictures, steal pamphlets. Like, the more artifacts that you can have to remind you of that experience, like, make it like you're there, you're gonna go and get everything. It's like going to Costco on a Sunday at lunch. You're gonna go and get all the free samples you can, because it's the best experience possible, and will really help you just understand those things. And then also, I really appreciated the photo that you had of your interview in this deck here, where you can see like your interaction. It looked like you had a process, like it looked like they were writing on sticky notes. And we'll be showing out more resources, or I think some of the resources too, about just the protocol for interviews, or like being mindful of how you want to interact, and having a plan, an action plan, so you get there. It's not just like, okay, we're here and we have a person, what's next? But you have some ideas of like the questions you're going to talk about, things you want them to generate, and how they can be really useful for, or the people, the interactions can allow you to get a lot of insights, and how to have those conversations when everybody's in the room. We're at 12, So I do want to have everyone jump back into this notes doc to round out because we have some information talking about the upcoming crit happening in 2 weeks. So that concludes the Immerse, like the title Immerse phase. Continue with your interviews. We'll also be sharing out information and the contact information about the Changemaker cohort, which is the YMCA contacts that you all should reach out to. Now that they're onboarded, they're expecting your calls, so definitely take advantage of them and learn a little bit more about how the YMCA has been approaching this problem all across the country. But the next thing that we're going to be doing over the course of the next 2 weeks is synthesizing all these insights that we're gathering and really reframing. So it's all about making sense of all the research that you've been gathering. So we're going to be focusing and narrowing to know your constraints, and then through that narrowing, it will allow us to ideate with those constraints to come up with a lot of ideas after we have the critique in 2 weeks on March 3rd. So as you're going through and you're finishing up these interviews, a lot of you have already started reframing or pivoting towards the direction that you want to pursue, but giving yourself a framework for how you want to synthesize things will help your future research and framing. So thinking about how you want to take all the insights or all the findings that you're getting and then distill them down into tangible insights. The process of doing that, having a set discussion with your team about how you want to get that intake and how you want to transfer it into an output will allow for a more easy transition as you get more info as you continue over the course of this project. Part of this process too is creating an empathy map, which is linked here, and we'll be sharing out these resources in the next post that we update. But these resources in the empathy map allows you to understand who the stakeholder is, who the young person of today is, and who the change maker is. So it allows you to get an idea of what they say, think, do, feel, and what their pros and cons and motivations and hopes, dreams are. One of that frameworks that we discussed could be a matrix example, which is highlighted here, which allows you to really put everything up on a board and identify who is being affected by what and what makes the most sense to pursue. Creating personas during this time period too is something we're really going to push. I feel that personas is a very important part of my design process, especially coming out of Immerse. It allows me to have a third party that I can that humanizes the problem and the challenge that we can have a discussion about, rather than saying some youth. We can identify a name like Mark is somebody who is interested in doing these things, and have a conversation, tell Mark's story of how they engage with the YMCA in the future and the ideas and the concepts that you create. There's more summaries of synthesis techniques. Lastly, the thing that we want to hammer is how can we's. How can we's are the tool that we use to focus in, and they're the lens through which we ideate. Having a very specific how can we is going to do your team wonders. The how can we is comprised of 3 components. It is a user, a behavior, and place. Again, specificity is important. You want to know who you're designing for. You want to know what you want them to do and where on their journey you want them to do it. So those are the key components that I'll be looking for in your how can we's over the course of the next 2 weeks. So feel free to share out your progress. I encourage you to do that. I encourage you all to share out the resources. Ivana, you had that. Other teams, share out any other insights that you have in the Slack channel. Be sure to talk to each other, talk to your communities, and we're looking forward to seeing you on the next crit. Critique again is with the YMCA of USA will be joining us on March 3rd. Same time, digital place. You'll be sharing out on Monday, March 2nd, your deck, and we'll Slack out the next template for you to follow and personalize as you see fit for that. Great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you, Eileen. And
Bye.
goodbye,
Bye,
everybody.
guys.
Bye.